Hello everyone, welcome to my Code TESOL workshop. My name is Wayne Finley and I'm very happy to talk to you today. Before we get started on this topic, I just want to tell you how this workshop is going to work. So first of all, don't worry, this is a Zoom workshop, so we will have breakout rooms, we will have discussion, and you can meet lots of new people, you can network, because really that's one of the beauties about having a Zoom workshop. However, there are some pre-recorded segments like this because I find it difficult to concentrate when there's one person speaking, usually in a little corner of the screen. You just see their head, usually wearing headphones and with a microphone, and then you see the PPT slides. I think it should be the opposite. You should see the person full screen and maybe the PPT is in the corner. So that is why I'm doing it like this. But let's stop talking about it, let's start doing it. I want you to imagine right now I am in Vatican City. And I was there a few years ago, beautiful architecture, really interesting, the Pope, all that kind of culture. But what really blew my mind was when I went inside the Sistine Chapel. As you know, the Sistine Chapel, famous for a magnificent piece of art, a magnificent design by Michelangelo. And so I didn't know what to expect. I walked inside the Sistine Chapel. First I look, I see lots of tourists, they all have their cameras, and they're all pointed upwards. And so my idea of what the Sistine Chapel would be would maybe one little painting, and wow, it looks pretty, but that's about it. And so I walk to the center of the Sistine Chapel room, I look up at the ceiling. Unbelievable. My mind was completely overwhelmed by different emotions, different feelings. It was like staring into the Grand Canyon or looking at the Niagara Falls. Just your mind cannot believe what it is seeing. My eyes needed to be tested. I just could not believe it. The figures in the drawing looked 3D. They were kind of popping out of the walls. My sensation there was just, this is genius. This is Beethoven. This is Michelangelo. This is Da Vinci. This is just incredible beauty, incredible artistry. And what I found is everybody appreciates great design. Everybody in the Sistine Chapel that day, all the tourists, nobody was crossing their arms. Well, that's a nice ceiling. Maybe a little bit more paint would help. No, everybody had the same feeling, just absolutely blown away by the design of it. And it's the same with any kind of design. If you watch one of those famous speeches by Steve Jobs when he's selling the MacBook Air.
It's so thin, it even fits inside one of these envelopes that we've all seen floating around the office. And so let me go ahead and show it to you now. This is it. Let me take it out here. This is the new MacBook Air, and you can get a feel for how thin it is.
Or Ken Robinson talking about how education should promote creativity a little bit more.
And my contention is all kids have tremendous talents, and we squander them pretty ruthlessly. So I want to talk about education, and I want to talk about creativity. My contention is that creativity now is as important in education as literacy.
Or just looking at the Sistine Chapel, an incredible piece of art. We all appreciate great design. It seems to be in our DNA. We just recognize it. We all know great design when we see it. And so what I want you to do now is to answer this question in your breakout rooms. What are the ingredients of great design? I'll give you 5 minutes, starting now. There are 4 ingredients I have found in my research, in my experience. The first one is originality.
So my last piece of advice is to think younger. Every day I'm confronted with interesting questions from my 3 young kids. They come up with questions like, Why can't cars fly around traffic? Or why don't my shoelaces have Velcro instead? Sometimes those questions are smart.
The second one is a saying made famous by Steve Jobs. Do you know the famous expression for design by Steve Jobs?
It just works the way it ought to. So it all just works. It just all works. It just, boom, pops to life and works. It just works. And it just works. And it just worked. It just works seamlessly. It really works. And it really works. It works perfectly. And it just works.
That's right, it just works. It does exactly what it is designed to do. It just works. And the third ingredient, closer to what Michelangelo was doing, the sensation you feel there, it stands out. It is beautiful. It is aesthetically pleasing.
And added some light as well, so it actually looks like a city during the night. And then I went back to fix the painting more and more. I think it's so fun to study different styles of different artists. We always tend to compare each other with others and think we need to paint or draw a certain way, but there are so many different styles and ways how to create art, which makes the art piece so unique. Some artists like to paint hyper-realistically, some others like to paint super abstract and messy. But none of these styles mean that someone is better than the other at painting. They're just different and unique in their own way.
And the fourth ingredient, I think a great design is intuitive. It's easy to figure out what it does or what it represents.
Color side and a white side, okay? This is outside, this is inside, okay? The top side is the edge that contains a metal wire. Put it over the bridge of your nose, okay? Press a little bit, and then put the earlobe over. Pull it down so that it covers your chin, and then press it smoothly. Make sure it fits nicely. After you worn it, if you have to take it out, you have to discard it. Do not reuse.
So when I went into the Sistine Chapel, I was blown away by its majesty, its beauty, but I did understand, it represents a kind of religion and the beauty of creation, etc. Or a smartphone, I turn on my smartphone. Most of the time I know exactly how to watch a video, how to send an email, how to surf the internet. It's intuitive. You know what it is designed to do. Let's now take all of those ingredients and mix them into our classroom. Let's start with one of the most basic ones, something we do every single day as teachers, and that is lesson plans. So what I want you to do is I'm going to put you in a new random group in a breakout room, and I want you to answer this question. Very simple. How do you design your lesson plans? 5 minutes. Well, I think every teacher has a different philosophy, a different idea of how lesson plans should be designed. There's different approaches, PPP, ESA, task-based learning. There's all sorts of approaches and philosophies. So I'm just going to show what I like to do. First of all, before I design any materials, before I go on the internet looking for new materials or thinking of new ideas to bring into class, I always start with the objective. What is the goal of that lesson? What am I trying to achieve by the end of class? And so that way, anything I bring into the lesson plan will match the objective. I don't want to do random activities. That can be fun. Students might like to play random games and do random scavenger hunts. But I personally like everything to match the objective. I just think it is so much smoother and it makes more sense for me as a teacher. So I always start with an objective. For example, the objective could be write a paragraph about giraffes. Could be deliver a 5-minute presentation about giraffes. List 5 details about giraffes. So depending on my students and what I'm trying to achieve, all of those could work. But the objective should be clear and measurable. By the end of class, can you easily measure, they can do it, yes or no? If they can do it, great, maybe just review it in future classes. If they can't do it, going to have to come back to it. Also, I think it's really important to know your audience, or in this case, know your students. Who are your students? Are they children with low levels of English? Are they high-level adults? Knowing your audience, knowing your students makes a huge difference for making a successful lesson plan. So, first of all, start with their skill level. Are they beginner, intermediate, advanced? That will really help you. Also, what's been important for me is knowing their motivation level. How much are they interested in this class or learning English in general? In my career, I've had some students come in, did not want to know about English, didn't want to study English, and so a lot of my lesson planning was about engagement, building that interest, building that motivation. If they are already really motivated, then maybe you don't have to worry about that so much. Also, think about their backgrounds, what really makes them tick. When I was teaching children, sometimes I would have a difficult student, but one way to get through to them was to find out what was their interest. Was it soccer? Was it animals, dinosaurs? And then I would bring these things into my lesson plans. One example of that was a student when I was teaching in the Hogwarts system. He didn't like the class, didn't seem to like learning English, but I found out he loved reptiles. And so what did I do? I started using stories of reptiles, pictures of reptiles, and after that, hook, line, and sinker. He was really interested in the class. That is connected to interests. If you have 20 students and you quickly discover, I don't know, they all love baseball, then start talking about baseball. Bring in baseball. Goals as well. That's the first question, or one of the first questions I ask my students in the very first class. Why are you taking this class? What is your motivation? What is your goal? Sometimes it's, I just want to improve speaking, or I want to get an A+, or I want to go traveling, or I want to speak to in one case, speak to my son's family in America. So find out those goals, and then you can bring those goals. You can help them achieve those goals in your lesson. I also believe in having a variety of teaching methods. In the past, when I first became a teacher, I would sometimes have 5 or 6 really good classes, but I was using the same kind of activity over and over again with slight variations. And eventually students would say, "Oh, this is a little bit boring now. Oh, teacher, we have to do it again." And so I learned if I mix up the varieties, use different methods, it's much more interesting and much more motivating for my students. And so I keep the objective, but I'm not always doing the same activities over and over again. I'm always looking for new activities and generating new ideas for activities. But of course, I try to make all of the different activities, methods, engaging and interactive. I just don't want to do the same ones ad nauseum. Finally, I love to finish my classes with a product. I don't just want to end with random free talking or just kind of filling in a textbook activity. I want them to show something so that I can easily measure their learning. So for example, it could be presenting a dialogue, performing a dialogue in pairs in front of the class. It could be giving a short presentation, either by themselves, in pairs, in groups. That would also be good. Making a poster and then presenting it, or putting it on the wall for some kind of a walking around like an art gallery activity. Writing an essay, oh, that takes quite a long time. With other students, lower level students, I might just go for write a few sentences or a paragraph rather than an essay. But writing is always a good way for students to demonstrate what they have learned. And finally, conversations, if it's on a particular topic, on particular questions, discussion points, arguing pros and cons, etc., then a conversation can be fine. So I do that a lot now in my speaking classes, especially in Zoom, because it's very hard for them to present these products. So I often go with conversations. Planning a lesson is one thing, but now let's talk about one of my favorite activities as a teacher, and that is designing materials. I can tell you for every class that I teach, I design materials. Sometimes I will take them from the internet and I will adapt them, but quite often I am creating materials from scratch, from the beginning, just creating the materials myself. And so I want to ask you now, what tools do you use to design materials. Let me again give you 5 minutes in a random breakout room. My number one go-to when creating materials is probably the most basic one, Microsoft Word. I actually pay for a subscription every month because I use it so often. And so for almost every class I have ever taught, I have created materials using Microsoft Word. Sometimes it's worksheets, other times it's just simple handouts to do speaking activities, for example. Here's some more examples that I have created. Let's have a look at some of my worksheets created in 2018. I've chosen 2018 because I recently changed my university job, and so my 2019 worksheets are backed up somewhere and it's not easy to access them. But 2018 I still have here on my hard drive. So let's have a look at fall first of all. That's right, I taught a course to international students called Self-Discovery and Life Plan. So you can see here for this one they were only meeting once a week, and so here is where I created all my materials. Let's take a look at the intro, starting with an icebreaker. This kind of worksheet I only started creating over the last 2 years, where you don't really see the instructions so much. But you do see what the activity is. So if I remember here, they had to interview or talk to maybe 6 different people, find out information about them, personal information. Here, I think this was probably group work, so they would discuss this question in their groups and write down their answer. So I often like to give these group handouts to the different groups in my classes. Let's go back, let's take a look at class 4, time management goal setting. So I was talking about SMART goals. So these kind of worksheets you can see I would create here, and then I would print them off and then cut them out. So that would be 1 page for 3 different students. And let's click on group learning styles. We were learning about different learning styles. That was actually in the curriculum. And then teaching, I think I actually got them teaching, imagining they were teaching the students with the different supposed learning styles. Of course, there's a lot of debate now over whether there are such thing as learning styles or multiple intelligences. But I had fun with this and students really enjoyed it. And in this class, it was very important to use handouts because there was no computer. So I had to do everything old school, whiteboard, just me, my voice, my body, and handouts. You can see here what I like to do is just put a picture in the middle of the page and then give it to groups. And this is basically a group brainstorm, a group mind map. So together as a group, they would write their ideas to whatever the question is in the class that day. So I guess here it was before I told them what it is, what do they think a fixed mindset is? And so they could guess or they could use their smartphones to answer. Same for growth mindset. Then a little bit later I also talked about benefit mindset. Let's go back to a spring class now, because I think this will show you an example of my common kind of worksheets. Earlier in my university teaching career, I lived and died by my worksheets. My worksheets were basically my whole lesson plan on paper for the students to see. So, for example, that's right. So really, I wouldn't really need my lesson plan. I would just look through my worksheet and follow it along, and I would pretty much know what I was doing. So I guess talking about this habit, as you know, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of them, habit 3, put first things first. Looks like I was talking about procrastination, started with a mind map, the brainstorm, a little bit of individual or pair study. How can you solve the problem of procrastinating? I guess that famous TED Talk by Tim Urban was next. They watched the TED Talk, took notes, and had to label some of the details. I think this was the instant gratification monkey, the rational decision maker, and the panic monster. It works. I do remember what they are. Here you can see the different steps. So how to overcome procrastination. Eat an elephant. Start with the first bite. Pick off the goblins, the distractions, ignore the distractions. And I think there was some kind of game here. So you can create these kind of worksheets for every class you teach. And usually students enjoy them as long as you mix up the worksheets and it's not basically a copy and paste from the previous worksheet and filling in the blanks. Canva is also now all the rage, not just in designing marketing materials and posters and flyers, but also creating teacher materials. Here's an example of some of my Canva materials. This is one example of material I've created for my classes on Canva. What I like about Canva is I think it just looks more distinct, it stands out, it's more stylish. PPT can look okay, but they tend to look quite generic. They seem to follow a particular template. Whereas with Canva, you can really go to town and really express yourself. And so you can see here I was talking about how to explain processes. In this case, how to explain the process of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So we have the correct vocabulary, the transitional words, next, then, finally, the detail, etc., etc. So this was one example. Also, I like to use Canva to create prompts for my students, especially now I'm making online videos. And it just is an easy way to put a question on the screen with a clear background, and then I can roll through random questions. So for example, if you were rich, what would you do? If you could be a celebrity for a day, which celebrity would you be? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why? So I like to put these on the screen. It's also very good to know where to find copyright-free material. One obstacle we can run into in teaching online classes, making videos, is we have to be much more careful about copyright, and that's why we can find lots of free images and videos online. The number one website that I know teachers use is pixabay.com. You can go onto Pixabay and search for any image that you need for your class. So let's take a look. Let's say, just came to my head, clown. I don't know why. I need a clown. I can see Finding Nemo there. But I can look for a clown picture, and there we go. So I can find any image I need on here. Another one is Unsplash. For this one, they do recommend you give credit to the person who's taken the photograph. So you can try to do that. Maybe put it in the detail section of the YouTube video, or you can put it on the image itself. But Unsplash are free images. So again, let's say I couldn't find a good clown picture. Let's see what is on here. I can see more photorealistic clowns. You see, oh, like a Joker there. That'd be a good picture. So here we see lots of high quality images on Unsplash. And one I recommend for videos is pexels.com. You can use this video for those nice zoom backgrounds people use, but you can also use it to find copyright-free videos. When I created an Udemy course late last year, this was the website I used to find a few videos. I don't know if anything will come up for clown. Let's take a look. Oh, we do have some clown videos. What's this one? You can see a clown kind of moving away. Some street performers dressed as clowns. So these are all copyright free. You can use them freely in any kind of course, either online or offline. More recently, because I've been only teaching online, I've been using Zoom, but I've also been creating videos like this, and I use Final Cut to make the videos. This is what Final Cut looks like when I'm creating a video. You can kind of see the finished product here, but every video I create starts with just two files. One is my MP4 file that I've recorded with my DSLR camera. So you can see me here in front of my green screen. And in front of the green screen I have my softbox lights. Didn't do a perfect job in these videos because it's a little bit dark around here. It needs to be a little bit brighter, otherwise it can affect the green screen. But yes, you can see here I'm also wearing the microphone, which I record separately. I do have a nice microphone coming out of the camera, but it's just not as good as if I'm standing using this lapel microphone. The reason is because I'm recording in my living room, and so there's a bit of an echo, which is eliminated if I use the lapel microphone. So there I have my green screen file, and what I do next, I can take a look. This is my microphone file, and so what I would do then is move both of these files in here, so you can see they are separate, And then what I can do, if I highlight both files, I can create multicam clip. I can synchronize the file so that my lapel microphone matches up with the DSLR MP4 file. And then I can drag it onto the timeline here in Final Cut Pro. And that works very well. So I can create my background, and then I can put overlays, things that I want them to have a look at on the screen, like I have done in these videos for this workshop. And that works very well. What you can also do is, if you screen record, you can also splice that in, so you can easily go from this kind of file to your screen recorded file. Let me show you an example you can start using this week. So let's take a look. Here we can see the title. It says follow-up comments and reactions. A follow-up comment, not just a follow-up question, a comment, a reaction. You say something before you ask the next question. We can see there are two categories on this. This first category is encouraging. What is encouraging? What does that mean? Encouraging is you want your partner, your friend, to keep talking. You want to show them that you are interested. Screen recording is also your best friend. There's lots of different software you can download depending on your computer to record the screen and also talk in the corner, as we see on many YouTube videos. Personally, I prefer to record separately, so I look like this, and then I can splice in screen recorded footage. It takes a little bit longer in the editing time, but personally that's my preference. The screen recorder I use is QuickTime. So this is what it looks like when you've recorded your screen on QuickTime. So really it's just like I'm using my computer, except I've got my microphone connected. I guess the only issue with QuickTime is you cannot see my video, but I think it's fine for my purposes. And then when I finish recording, I just hit this button here, and that will stop my screen recording. Many teachers now are also using Google Docs. It's a free alternative to Microsoft Office. And what's great about Google Docs, you can share those documents with students very easily, and students can work on editing those documents in real time.
Let's get this down to something a little bit more manageable. We also have some options underneath this format menu. A lot of similar things that we see on the format bar, but we also have some things that we don't see right away. So if I click on test, if I highlight this, format strike through, we get that nice little strike through with our text. There are some other cool things in the insert menu that will let you format the document as a whole. So if I click on the end of this first sentence here and I go to insert, and I want to insert a page break, I can insert a page break so that the next sentence begins on the next page.
Of course, as teachers, we don't always have enough free time to design materials. There have been many times in my career where I've had so much work to do that I couldn't spend 2 hours making a worksheet or an interesting activity for my class. And so that's when I think innovation is your best friend. So go online, find interesting activities for that day's lesson plan, and then you can use the activity, or in my case, I adapt the activities, because those activities are usually generic. They're for other people's classes. I want all the activities in my lessons to match my students exactly. And so I will adapt them, change the language a little bit, make it more relevant to Korean culture. So adaptation is absolutely your best friend as well when making materials. Innovation is just as good as creativity. Let's now think about this question. How do you design a successful course? So we've moved from lesson plan to materials, and now the whole course. Imagine you are in charge of the whole curriculum. How do you design a successful course? 5 minutes. I think designing a successful course is similar to making a very nice lesson plan. All the design principles are the same. But I always think back to what Stephen Covey once wrote in his best-selling book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. So I always think the end is the top of the mountain, it's the peak of the mountain, and I am at the bottom with my students, and my goal as a teacher is to help them climb that mountain. So depending on who your students are, their interests, their levels, their motivation, their backgrounds, they might need different help along the way to get to the top. And so usually that comes down to student engagement. How can I make this course very interesting? How can I engage their hearts, their emotions, their feelings, as well as their mind? So that's one aspect. Student engagement, absolutely pivotal when I'm designing a course. But also the skills. To reach that objective, to reach that peak of the mountain, what skills do they need to get there? And those are the skills I focus on. So for example, right now I'm making a business writing course to be taught this summer, and the end objective that I've been given is they must be able to apply for a job. And so I've taken that to mean, okay, they're going to have to be able to write a good resume, a nice cover letter, they need to master email writing, and they need to perform well in job interviews. And so those are the skills I've identified to reach the objective. However, writing a resume, writing a cover letter could be a little bit boring. And so I will have to think very carefully, how can I make it interesting? Thankfully, for this course, business writing, applying for a job, it's such a practical, useful skill that we all need to know. I've often found students stay motivated climbing that mountain because they know it will have practical benefits when they graduate. Now let me give you some examples from other courses that I've created. Here we have 3 courses that I either made myself or I helped make. I believe I designed public speaking, conversation skills, and I had a co-author working on the business communication course. Let's first take a look at public speaking. Not much to see here, but of course public speaking, the end goal, the top of the mountain, the peak of the mountain, is giving a longer presentation. For my public speaking course, I believe it was 12 minutes, but it was on a big stage in front of many people. And also at the end of the course, a grand presentation where the best presenters from each class would go into a competition in an auditorium with I think 200 students there. But the way I did it, I think in a public speaking course, you need to get them immediately practicing public speaking, and you need to do it in every single class. I don't think you can devote some classes to just preparing or writing. I think they should practice that public speaking skill every single class. And so when I designed this course, that's what I did. For each 70-minute session every day, they would have to give some kind of presentation. So you can see here, 3 things I want to do before I'm 30. That was one of them. Another one, I have a dream today. And these mini presentations were only between 30 seconds to 1 minute. I would start quite small and say, hey, it's just 20 seconds, very easy. Stand up and give your speech. And then it would get longer as the course progressed. This is what I would do at the end of each week. So it was a 5-week public speaking course. Every day I was with the students. And always on the Friday, they would have to give a longer presentation. This was probably the first week of the course. 3-minute persuasive presentation. And they would do it in a room with a big stage where it would feel like the whole world is watching. So then I would give them structure, for example, introduction, body, conclusion, and focus on particular skills on the stage. And I would actually do it a little bit like American Idol, where I was a judge and we'd all give each other feedback. Peer feedback, feedback from the teacher, and I think that really helped them become more confident in public speaking. By the end of the course, I'm always looking for public speaking skills. I don't expect TED Talk quality presentations after a 5-week public speaking course, but I do expect confident skills, clear speaking, etc. So you can see here, this was my rubric: eye contact, gestures, posture. Preparedness, is the presenter prepared? How fluent do they speak? If they're prepared, if they practice, I think any student can speak smoothly. That doesn't mean perfect grammar, but smoothly. Voice inflection, I cover voice. Actually, in the textbook I was using, also that is covered. Stress, stretch, and pause. Structure, reliance on note scripts. Yes, I actually teach my students to try and not use scripts or prompts in their presentation. The most difficult, of course, is no script or prompts, but I at least expect no scripts after a few public speaking classes, because if you use a script, you can't use gestures, posture, eye contact. Visual aids, we talk about how to have good visual aids in a presentation. And time, I guess this one was 6 minutes. So that was public speaking. Let's take a look at conversation skills. Throughout the conversation skills course, lots of speaking practice, midterm exams, final exams, but I also do little quizzes to focus on particular areas. So for example, speaking quiz 1, greetings, farewells, reactions, follow-up questions, circumlocution. If you're not sure what that means speaking around something when you don't know the word or it's a taboo word, etc. Contribution in speaking classes, I want all students to speak equally if possible. Speaking quiz 2, similar, but I add a few more things, maybe buying time, taking turns, changing topics. Speaking quiz 3, if I remember, I did something completely different. I usually teach some job interview skills in all of my conversation classes because I know that they're very useful skills, and usually the students I have at this university, I only teach them one time. So if I don't teach them now, I never get to teach these skills, and these skills can really be a valuable asset when they graduate. I suppose what I add here is a bit like public speaking, platform skills, eye contact, body language, gestures, posture. And because it's a job interview, I also take away points if they are late, because I know in a real job interview, if you are late, even by 1 second, you're in big trouble. And finally, a course I co-authored, business communication. In this course, by the end, we want resumes, cover letters, email writing skills. We want them to be good at job interviews. And so everything heading up the mountain is leading towards those skills. So everything in class is testing that. So to test the writing skills, I would ask them to do a portfolio. So you can see here, looking for 3 drafts of a resume, 3 drafts of a cover letter, 1 draft of an email exchange. That's right, I teach email exchanges. And a real job application email sent to my email address at that time. And for the job interview, I believe it was similar to what I just showed you, except obviously it's a big part of their grade. I also had students decide what job they wanted to interview for, because the questions would be different. So teacher, doctor, hotelier, or chef. So at the beginning of the interview, I would always ask them, what job are you applying for today? They would tell me, and then I could direct the job interview, the line of questioning in that direction. So that's good if you can give students some freedom over how their final exam will work, or their conversation or their job interview will work. What's interesting about this one, this was my co-author's idea. Because we wanted it to be like a real job interview, they had to dress professionally to get 4 points on the rubric. They also had to be well-groomed. And all of them did, or almost all of them did, in this class. And here again, 4 points are deducted for being late. So those were the 3 examples I showed you, but I just want to underline, I think creating a course is about heading up a mountain to reach the peak, and depending on the course and your students, the peak will be different. In all 3 of these courses, the top of the mountain looks different. Here, wanting a long, confident, smooth presentation. Here, a 20-minute conversation without any help from the teacher. And here, skills that would land them their dream job. Last question. So we've talked about lesson plans, materials, courses. There's only one more design I want to think about, and that is you. What is your objective as an educator, and how do you plan to get there? Sometimes we spend so much time thinking about our students, our classes, we forget about ourselves, our own aspirations, our own goals, our own objectives. What is your objective as an educator? How do you plan to get there? Talk to your group for 5 minutes for the final time.